And up to 1,000 young people are known to be homeless in Gloucestershire each year. But organisations that work with these people think the number is actually much higher because not everyone asks for help. Many are so-called hidden homeless, sofa surfing with friends. Well, now the charity Gloucestershire Nightstop is going to try to bring together all the relevant local organisations and authorities to tackle the issue of youth homelessness. 26-year-old Larissa originally from Cameroon, is just one of the hundreds of young people that Gloucestershire Nightstop has helped in the past 20 years.
Back in 2014, I got a little bit of issues, family issues, I was forced to leave. I joined Nightstop. They were parents to me. They took me, they explained to me how Nightstop work and something like that. I think meeting them back in 2014 was actually the best thing that could happen to me because I was lost. Because when I was living with my family, I never knew actually nothing about help or Nightstop or anything. I only had my family, and then when I leave my house, it was just to go to school and come back. I did not know nothing. So when I met them, thanks to the council, I was happy because it was the right people at the right time, because everything was a big of mess in my life back then. People have no idea what impact homelessness can have on anyone, because when you don't know where you will sleep, you can be desperate to do stupid things, to get involved with the bad people just to have a place to stay. So which I think having Nightstop was a huge help. I was going to friends weekends. It never end up good when you stay for so long. But knowing I had Nightstop, I was fine with it because I didn't find myself I have to beg or force myself to get involved in things I don't want to get involved just because I need a place to sleep. I would be forced even to do anything just to have a place to sleep. So having them at the right time was actually the best thing that could have actually happened.
Well, with me now is Jacob Bradfield. He's a board member with Gloucestershire Nightstop, having been helped by the service in the past, here to share a little bit about what Nightstop is hoping to achieve with this latest research project. Morning to you, Jacob.
Morning.
We just heard, obviously, Larissa's story there, or some of Larissa's story. You yourself have been helped by the service. Would you mind just telling me a little bit of your story to start with?
So a number of times, sort of on and off, there was some relationship issues at home with my dad, so I was sort of kicked out and then went back home and kicked out and then went back home, and each time Gloucestershire Nightstop gave me a place to stay.
Give me an idea of just how important that is when you're in that position, you're vulnerable, and there's obviously a lot going on at home.
It is so important just to have somewhere to go and stay the night. I was at sixth form at the time as well, so it meant that I was able to get to sixth form still and carry on with my education. And I was also doing some part-time work, so it just it kept those other sides of my life sort of semi-floating.
Yeah, absolutely. And now then, being obviously more closely involved with the charity, tell me a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve with this new project.
So there's a lot of people out there, a lot of organisations doing a lot of good work, but often we have the problem if they're not communicating as well as they could be. So as is coming into the public consciousness quite a bit more now, the homelessness and the housing sector in general is in increasing crisis, and it's just getting worse. So what we're looking to do is bring together all of these partners behind a two-phased project, basically. The first phase is research, finding out what the services are that we have now, where the gaps are, and then the second phase is bringing together partners to fill those gaps. And we see ourselves as the facilitator of that, bringing them together because we can't do everything on our own.
It's a big job, isn't it? That is really. When you're talking, what sorts of organisations are involved in this sorts of things? For those who don't know at the moment, what is currently out there? I know it's the start of the project, but give me an idea.
So obviously local authorities, district, borough and city councils have statutory housing responsibilities. There's a lot of charities and stuff as well. But what we are looking for is much wider than that, because obviously there are addiction issues, there's mental health issues, there's care leavers, there's people coming out of the criminal justice system. So there's a whole range of elements that need to work together outside of what you would see as housing and homelessness to make sure that Move On is successful and that we build the strongest possible foundation so that the young people can then build successful lives.
And that is the thing, I suppose, for each of these young people. Everyone's own personal situation will be very different, and there will be all of those different issues. So how do you do that then? Because that's quite a wide network potentially of services and people that you're going to need to make sure that everything is on hand for each individual case.
Yeah, so this is where we're relying on the participation of all of these different organisations, because all of them have close contact on the ground now, and they all have a sort of fairly detailed picture of their specific area. So it's just bringing all of that together, so that we get a full picture, and then looking at innovative ways to solve those problems. We've been working with St Basil's. We've been getting advice from St Basil's of Birmingham, and they've done a lot of work with government on service pathways for youth homelessness. So that's a starting point for us to see how we can translate some of that work into the more diverse communities, the rural communities and the cities in Gloucestershire.
Do you think there is a lack of understanding for people, or perhaps a lack of understanding of how complex things can be when it comes to homelessness, and why, people might end up sofa surfing, living on the streets when it comes to some of those more kind of complex situations?
Yeah, I think there is. It's incredibly incredibly complex. And one of the main reasons is just general family relationship breakdown. But it's very, very broad, and you mentioned hidden homelessness then as well, and that's something that we don't really think of in the public conversation when we talk about homelessness. The picture is immediately people on the street, but sometimes sofa surfing can be just as detrimental, because you're still having that instability. Often it's putting a lot of strain on your relationships with whoever you're asking to stay with, especially if it's long term. So we do need a much broader conversation about homelessness.
You've mentioned trying to bring different groups together then to just help people in the best way possible. Can you give me a sense of how this is going to work now going forward, and the timeline for some of this, Jacob?
So we're looking to launch the research element in June. We've already been laying the groundwork. We're in discussions with core partners now to bring them on board to the steering committee. We've got a lot of interest, in particular from councils at the moment, which is really useful. And I believe the timetable is around 18 months from now to the end of the research project. And about halfway through that, we'll start looking at bringing the rest of the partners in, so that as soon as the research is done, we can hit the ground running on solving those problems.
What are you hoping then? You get to the end of that 18 months. What are you hoping you're going to achieve with this, or what it's going to look like in a year and a half's time?
So that first phase, what we're looking at is we need to know exactly what services we have, how many people are homeless, because that's a gap in the figures. When you're looking at hidden homelessness, there's not a lot of figures around that. So it's getting the biggest, most detailed picture of everything possible, and then highlighting the exact gaps in the services so that we know what we need to collaborate to fill.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing a bit of it with me, and do keep us in the loop as things progress, won't you, as well, Jacob?
Yeah, will do. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Jacob Bradfield then, a board member. Gloucestershire Nightstop then has been helped by the service previously as well. They are looking then to start this new project, beginning with research, then bringing people together to really tackle the issues of youth homelessness. And we'll be talking a little bit more about this on the show a little bit later on as well. It's BBC Radio